Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm Logan Crawford. U.S. Senator Robert Menendez is charged as a criminal. Accusations anyway. But lessons learned from a botched prosecution of another U.S. Senator could mean the charges stick this time against Menendez. I am joined by the Ebru think tank. David Goodman, team leader, Central New Jersey chapter of Represent Us. Bruno Tedeschi, a political consultant. In Washington, D.C., Allan Topol is joining us via Skype, and attorney extraordinaire Peter Ticktin, tough name to say at times, is joining us as well. And in set, we also have Jeanette Hoffman, who is a Republican strategist plotting to take over the world. David, I will start with you. What are your thoughts on Robert Menendez?
Well, I'll say that Menendez represents the first super PAC scandal of our era, the first post-Citizen United decision. I mean, we're now in a totally different framework from the way scandals have been viewed in the past. Let me just give you a few quick metrics so that we can set the stage. In 2012, $7 billion was spent on the presidential election. 2014, the midterms, no presidential candidates, $4 billion spent on that. Dialing back to 2012, 99 Americans contributed 60% of all super PAC money that was spent in that 2012. Of that 2012, that $7 billion. The impact of super PACs have distorted our political process. My organization is dedicated to restoring representative democracy in this country because, frankly, if you focus on those 99 individuals, what we're living in right now is essentially an oligarchy of billionaires.
How do you get the money out of it, though?
Well, there are people who are working on constitutional amendments. That's a big movement. My organization is promoting something called the American Anti-Corruption Act, which was written by Trevor Potter. You know who Trevor Potter was. He was Stephen Colbert's lawyer. He's written a foolproof 9-point legislative package, which we are now working in terms of municipal, state, and county and efforts. You know, we've taken a leaf out of the book of the efforts for marriage equality, the issues of marijuana legalization. Both causes 20 years ago were having no headway with the Congress.
And now they're moving forward in part because of piecemeal legislation. Let me turn to Bruno for just a second. Bruno, why do these politicians hire people like yourself and work so hard to get these positions for what in some circles is a low-paying job?
Well, there's a lot of reasons that motivate people to get involved in politics, and I only take clients myself
who truly love the United States of America
and want to do what's best for the people. Absolutely, but there are other politicians, I think, out there that see it as an opportunity. Certainly, in a place like New Jersey, I covered New Jersey as a reporter for many years, and I came across a whole gallery of rogues and scoundrels who got into politics because they saw it as a way to enrich themselves.
Yes. And one after another. If you take the city of Newark, for example, Sharp James back in the 1980s was fleecing the city, and it seems like every mayor since then, with the exception of Cory Booker, of course, has robbed the city as well. Jeanette, talk to me about why there is so much money in politics, how these people become multi-millionaires on basically civil servant salaries.
Well, politics is a high stakes game, right? I mean, there's a lot of interests that support candidates, that support issues, as you spoke about, that are willing to donate a lot of their money. Billionaires want to give to super PACs because they care about certain issues. They want to give to candidates who advance their causes. And I don't think there are very few politicians.
Are these votes for sale?
No, but I mean, the fact of the matter is running campaigns is a very, very expensive game, especially in New Jersey when you have the two most expensive media markets, New York and Philadelphia, on either side of you. You need to spend a lot of money to get your message heard. And unfortunately, it's very hard to get money out of politics. I don't think anyone goes into politics, maybe a select few, with the intention of enriching themselves.
But they get corrupted along the way?
But I think they get corrupted along the way. I think power gets the better of them. And I think arrogance, a lot of it is arrogance. They think they can do it.
Let's talk to Allan Topol just a little bit. He's very entrenched in the Washington, D.C. scene. Harry Reid is a burgeoning scandal, in my opinion, with allegations that his son received a lucrative contract because of help that was given by his father in regards to a Las Vegas casino. Tell me about that scandal and some of the other scandals that are brewing and how it erodes trust in government.
Okay, you're making a tremendously good point, Logan, because this is the issue that I deal with in my book, The Washington Lawyer, Corruption in Washington. And your point's a good one, is what I focused on, so many people are doing it. Why did they go after Menendez? You pointed out Harry Reid. It's pretty odd for the administration to go after somebody in their own party. On the other hand, Menendez has been a thorn in the president's side on foreign policy issues for the last 6 years. And one has to wonder, when there are other people out there, Reid and others, who are doing similar things, was it a factor in this prosecutorial discretion that Menendez had been an opponent of the president and of the administration? At least that question is very, very much alive in Washington and being discussed among me and my colleagues.
Let's turn now to Peter Ticktin. Peter, tell me a little bit about your take on this culture of corruption in Washington. Do these people start out, as Jeanette says, with good intentions, and then they find out the road to heck is paved with them?
I believe that things tend to start at the top, and they trip down. We've seen, when you have a president of the United States that actually ends up getting disbarred, when you have leaders in Congress and so on, where these things happen, it becomes acceptable on a certain level. I know I practiced in a courthouse in Palm Beach County where the judges there would be so aghast if any judge were to do anything appropriate like this, that none of them would even think of it, as far as I can tell anyway. You know, where it's the standard in society where it's acceptable on some level, that's where we.
We're going to come back into studio now because I have a little problems with Peter's feed. David, South Park put this well for me a while back, and I won't quote it directly, but they say we have a choice between a giant turd and a super jerk, let's just say, that we don't have a choice. We've got Hillary Clinton on one side who can't erase her emails fast enough, and on the Republican side, you know, who's a Republican crook? Bruno, give me one.
Oh, where do we begin?
Oh, come on.
Okay. Well, they're on both sides, because I want to be fair. They're on both sides. It seems like we don't have a choice in this country.
Well, we don't have a choice, and until we restore democracy in this country, and you know, the issue, Logan, I know it's very tempting to focus on the presidential races. Those are very attractive, and obviously the high-end efforts. But the most important thing to look at is what's going on in the Congress. The average congressman these days spends 30 to 70% of his or her time fundraising.
Right.
I mean, that's what they do. And I assure you, the calls that they're making from call centers, they're smart enough not to do it in their offices because there are legal and ethical restraints here. So they go to call centers. So 30 to 70% of their day, and you got to give them a little time to sleep, is being spent raising money either for themselves or for their party. They're not, and believe me, the calls they're making are not to you and me. They're calling millionaires and billionaires, and the people who they're speaking to influence their decisions. So what I'm describing, what my organization is involved in, is a deep systemic form of corruption. It's easy to focus on the quid pro quo, and I understand the interest in Senator Menendez. He's entitled to his day in court. I'm not going to make a judgment on that. We'll see how that plays out. But we're talking about a nation and a political system that's awash in money. The numbers I gave at the beginning, 2012, 2014, are staggering. Think of the number of diseases we could have cured.
It's amazing. You know, in fact, let me just turn back to Peter, because we finally do have him. I did come up with Republican crook, by the way, Alphonse D'Amato, who laughed at getting HUD homes for his relatives. Peter, tell me your thoughts as continue what you were telling me about the culture of corruption in Washington and the road to heck.
When you use the words culture of corruption, what you're basically, that's what I'm talking about. It's a culture. It's permitted. It's understandable. It's not, you're not a pariah if you do it. You know, where we have a former president got disbarred, and now he gets up and gives speeches and people adore him. It's acceptable, the fact that he committed perjury. It's acceptable to some extent that people are using their influence in improper ways. But the one saving grace here very well may be the fact that we are paying attention to this today because our government isn't just accepting it, because somebody is getting prosecuted.
Jeanette, what Peter says is so true. We tend to completely ignore that we had a pervert in the White House, at least in part, who was doing untoward things with an intern. And America just seems to shrug it off.
I think there's this kind of ambivalence towards politics. Everyone thinks politics
and every
is
other part of our
dirty and
culture as well, though.
and-
As every other, I mean, from the
Yeah.
Kardashians on downward, we become this like debased culture where anything goes, and the
Right.
more tawdry your behavior is, the more celebrity you have.
Yeah, and I think in the case of Senator Menendez, if you watched his press conference, it was like a full-blown rally. There was no shame, there was no embarrassment, there was no acknowledgement that he did any wrongdoing, and despite the fact that he's only the 12th United States Senator to ever be indicted. It's really troubling, and I don't think someone like that can continue to serve the people while they're fighting this massive legal battle.
Bruno?
Guess where the last senator was from who was indicted?
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Which senator was that?
That
Harrison
was
Williams.
Harrison Williams. That's right.
Harrison
Who was a
Williams.
Republican, by the way, and the last Republican to ever get elected from New Jersey.
Like I said, they're on both sides of the aisle. I want to turn now to Allan Topol, joining us from D.C. Allan, what are your thoughts as you listen to our conversation?
Well, as I listen to our conversation, I still come out with the conclusion there's an enormous amount of corruption in Washington. There's an enormous amount of friends doing things for their friends on both sides. I think the government's going to have a lot of trouble making out its legal case that there was the kind of quid pro quo that's going to justify a corruption conviction. And I really wonder about the prosecutorial discretion of singling out Menendez when there are other people like Harry Reid who have done lots of things that fall into the same boat. So
We're running
those
out of
are
time.
Kind
I
of my
think-
thoughts from Washington. This is not an isolated case.
I think Jeanette made a very good point. I'm not going to turn to her because we don't have any time, but the fact that people were cheering like it was a pep rally for Menendez, to me, was unbelievable. At least be remorseful. At least say, you know what, if this appears like I've done something wrong, I'm sorry, but I did not, and have an explanation instead of, people cheering and boo-ha-ha for him. Peter Ticktin, thank you so much for your time and your insight today. He joined us via Skype. When we come back, it is time for our lightning round from the New York Auto Show to the EU's concern about companies like Apple and Google. I say they're just jealous. More after this.